Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 2 live stream for the People's Open. Gonna get you guys ready for all your props and bets tomorrow with a look at the weather report, some of the stat averages from round number 1, and that'll be both for live and over there on the PGA side. So we're gonna have both events going on simultaneously. Gives us a little bit of extra value to go out there and attack. So any questions that you've got, feel free to go ahead and throw those down in chat, and we're gonna go through all the details out there for tomorrow. See, we already got some hype people down there in chat. What's going on, Michael, with the let's go? And he says he subbed to the Patreon last night. Glad to have you on board. So we're able to make it a profitable day with some of our fades this afternoon. So let's try and run it back over there for the weekend. What's going on, Zach? Welcome on into the live stream as well. And he has a question about some 3-ball bets, which for sure we'll go over towards the end. So just sit back, whatever drink you guys got flowing. It's only a Thursday, so I'm just going with some Arizona iced tea, but glad to get after the golf out here for the next few rounds. So in terms of our stat averages, we're going to focus on the PGA event first. You can see them up here at the top end of the screen. So it played about 0.15 under par, which was a lot harder than what you had last year, which I kind of had an inkling it might be a little bit harder, but I thought it was going to be closer to maybe like a whole half a stroke under. The firm greens really took over this course, particularly in the PM when they started to get even crunchier. So though the winds don't look like that much of a factor for round 2, it was more so the firm conditions that caused that scoring. So I don't think that the averages are going to get all that much better. Really, the one thing we're going to have to check before we go out there and determine the averages for tomorrow are going to be these pin locations, which I haven't had the chance to go through them fully quite yet, so we'll do that here on the live stream. But expecting the same kind of conditions wind-wise out there tomorrow, these averages should be pretty accurate. So, birdie average, subject to a little bit of fluctuation depending on those pins. Same thing over here with the bogey average, but green regulation, also your fairway there at 7.2 per round. I don't think that those metrics are going to move all that much. So we'll talk about the pin locations here in just a few. They give us a real pinpoint idea on any fluctuations out there from round 1 to round 2. But in terms of your weather, it's almost identical from day to day. We're going to use the HRRR model as it's the most accurate. It does look like there's a little bit of wind that kicks up towards the end of the day, but until about 3-4 p.m. local time, you're talking about sub 6 miles an hour, which was pretty much the same exact thing today. Towards the end, it did kick up a little bit, just like they're calling for over there on Friday, but it didn't make a massive difference with the scoring. If you take a look at the AM versus the PM wave, the AM played like 0.22 under par. The PM wave was just about an even par scoring average. So there's about a 0.2 shot difference that you had between the two waves, even with the winds kicking up a little bit. So that's why I think it's going to be so consistent from round to round, because even from AM to PM wave with the winds kicking up a bit, it hardly changed in terms of the outcome on the course. So the main thing we're going to look at here are going to be these pin locations. So let me actually go over here and bring up the shot tracker so that we can go through them together. Pin locations for round 1 were easy in a couple cases, but in general, we're actually a little bit trickier than what we usually see for round number 1. So let's take a look at the first hole so we can go hole by hole here. I was a little bit surprised by the shape of that green there, but now we got the proper hole up to compare to. So hole 1's going to be in this back right corner. And you can see it's 5 paces from the right and a good ways onto this green. So it's here in that back shelf. And while it looks like a harder pin location and might be marginally more difficult than what you had for round 1, it does give you a little bit more room to move up your shot. And with these firm and fast greens, a front pin location can be accessible. You can see a guy like Wyndham Clark that's a bomber off the tee, only had a short wedge into this green. He was able to hit it to 7 or 8 feet. But guys like JJ Spawn that went off a lot earlier in the day were landing it about pin high and we're ending up back in this back left corner. So, if you're one of the longer players on tour, you may prefer this front pin location, but I would say a vast majority of your players are going to like this back pin location a little bit more. So I would say the scoring average will probably be pretty similar out there from day to day, but depending on player, they may actually prefer that kind of a pin location. Hole number 2 is in this left corner. So it's 17 paces on and it's 5 paces from the left, which I would say is an easier pin location than what you had for round 1. This back pin, it also gives you some room, but over here, 17 paces on, you're also going to have the room that you need to work with, but you don't have to worry about all this undulation on the green. This little hump and hollow towards the middle right portion makes things a little bit more difficult for getting up and down. And you even have some slope here in the back as well. You can see that that back left corner, there's a little elevated area. Same thing in this back right corner, which made that pin location a little bit more difficult around the green. So just a more wide open pin location over here on that left side. And you have enough room to run up shots, which I think is really going to be key with the firm conditions. Hole number 3 is a par 5, so it should be a scoreable hole. It's over here in that front left corner, which is going to make eagles really tough to come by because pretty much every shot that hits this green complex is going to run towards the very back. You saw a lot of people up here in this back right corner. If they ended up hitting the green, it was usually over here on the right side. So even though it's down on this low portion, it might look like it's in a bowl with this ridge running through the green. The unfortunate aspect is that it's going to be really tough to hit this front pin location. So I think if you're laying up, it's an easier pin location to hit a wedge to because it is on the front. You do have that backstop to the right that you can work it off of. But in terms of going forward in 2, I don't think you're going to see more eagles there or anything like that. I think the eagle rate, which was already extremely low, if not non-existent at hole number 3, is probably going to stay like that. But in terms of your birdie average, it might go up a bit because it's a easier bunker shot over here from the right side. I wouldn't call it easy though, as you have to contend with this little slope. But if you miss in the natural area in front, which by the way, there's no bushes in the front of this natural area, towards the back left where it was today, there were some bushes that could cause you some trouble over there. Now it's a little bit less protected with just sand up here towards the front. You're actually going to see people get up and down from that natural area, unlike a lot of the people that hit it over here left today and weren't able to get it up and down, i.e. Mav McNeely, who I could have really used that birdie from today, but unfortunately it wasn't that pin location. Next up, we've got hole number 4, which is in like the center of the screen, center back, we'd say, of this green complex. I would say that it's an easier pin than round 1, which might not seem the case as it's a little bit longer back there, but just like you had with the hole where you had it on that left middle side, it's less protected over here in the middle of the green. You don't have the bunkers as much in play with the center pin location, and you have all that room to run up the ball. So yeah, these pin locations, at least from the first look, they look pretty much spot in line with what we had for round number 1, if not a hair easier, which I could see them doing with the scoring being a little bit more difficult than usual. Let's get that out of there so I stop clicking on the wrong tab. Hole 6 is in this, hole 5, Ron, is in this middle right over here on this broad side of the green. I would say that this one's a lot easier than what you had for today. It's not as tucked near this bunker, which was a tough up and down if you short-sided yourself, but you also have a little bit of a side slope to the right to work the ball off of. And just like today, where you had enough room to work it up there, you're going to have even more room over here to the right. And the reason why I say that is if you hit it to the left side of this fairway, you didn't have a great angle to that green. In fact, you only had like this many boxes up to that pin location. But even if you miss to the short side on the right over here, you're still going to have a lot of that room to work with because you don't have that bunker to hit over. So that's why this location will be a little bit easier. Hole 6 is in this left corner. This is that left peninsula that we are looking at. This is a tougher pin. So I don't know if it's that much harder though, just because hole today was on this little bit of a ledge. You can see all that slope they have in front of this pin location, which made it kind of a tough 2-putt. You saw some 3-putts up there, including Tom Kim today, who 3-putted. A lot of lower tier players you saw doing that as well. And then if you missed over this green to the left, which you saw a few people do, it was an extremely difficult up and down. In fact, you had people hitting chip shots and running off of this front little shelf. So this wasn't an easy pin, but it is probably going to be a little bit easier than what you have for tomorrow, just because it isn't the most deep green, right? It's pretty narrow from front to back. So with these firm conditions, it's going to be a little bit tougher to hold that part of the green. So I would say it's a little bit tougher than round 1, but because this was already a difficult pin location, I don't know if it's going to change the scoring all that much. So like comparatively, it might not change much, but it is another tough pin location. So rounds 3 and 4, when it might get a little bit softer, that's when the scoring average might get significantly easier there. Hole 7 is going to be a middle right pin location. So this is a longer par 3. This is one of the tougher holes that you had out there. I don't know if it changes all that much because, rather than the bunker on the left being the one you had to worry about, now you'd be short-siding yourself over here in that right bunker. So I think it's, all things considered, pretty much the same hole, but maybe it favors people that fade the ball from left to right as opposed to guys that were drawing it in today and having a better chance to get it close. So hole number 8 is going to be a front pin location. It's like front left kind of over here towards where my cursor is right now. I would say an easy pin location because you do have enough room to hit the ball close, but not much of a difference than what we had for round number one, which, as you guys can tell, is kind of the predominant theme at this point. Hole 9 is over here on the back right side. It's kind of hard to say the back with how narrow this green complex is. I would say an easier pin location than today, just because you don't have this little false front to contend with, which not only made it tough with your approach shots, but also with your chip shots. You saw Scotty Scheffler, for example, hit the ball to like 15 feet because of this little false front. And right, he's got a good short game. So it was a difficult shot. Over here to the right side, though, it's a little bit less protected. You don't have that slope to deal with. And you do have this little backstop over here to the back left, which could help you get it closer to the ball, the pin. And especially because the greens are firm, like you could see guys, right, landing it short, running up to the slope, and then having it come back a little bit closer to the hole. Hole 10, so if you're starting on the back, let's take a look at that pin location. So it's over here on the left side. I would say it's easier than today, only because this was a really hard one to putt. It was really easy to leave it short and then have that downhill putt to the hole, or hit it long and have that side swiper because of all that slope to that side of it. So probably not a massive difference, but maybe a hair easier there at 10. Hole 11 is a middle right pin location, maybe middle right back is a better way to put it, about where my cursor is right now. I would say it's about the same kind of pin location as what you had for today. The reason I say that is, though this one was shorter and it's the center of the green, you didn't have that much room to work with. And a lot of people were hitting 170-yard shots into this green. So you can see Wyndham was able to make a birdie there. Again, his power, a really big asset on this course. Same thing with that apex height. But over here to the right side, your shorter, more traditional players are going to have a better chance to hit it closer with more room to work with. And it's an easier up and down with the bailout to this right side. Hole 12 is a front pin location. This is a par 3. So this one looks easier. But the one thing I'll say about this hole 12 here is, yes, the water's not going to be in play with this front pin location, but I'm not going to call it an easy hole. With the firmness of this golf course, it's still going to be like a 175-yard shot. I don't think you're going to see a ton of birdies here at hole number 12, but it's not like you saw a whole bunch for round number 1. So the scoring average probably gets a hair easier just because of the lack of water balls, but I don't think it's going to be an easy hole by any means. Hole 13 is a par 5, so it will be scoreable, even if it is a tough pin. Let's take a look at it. It's over here on the right side. You do have this little backstop to work it off of, it looks like, but also this little slope in front of this pin location, which kind of acts as a false front of its own. So I would say that this pin is pretty similar to today, where, first off, it was tucked just over this bunker. That was the main thing about round number 1. But it's not easy because, this slope makes it a little bit difficult, right? Today, it was the bunker that made it a little bit difficult. It's still going to be a birdie hole, though, given that it's a par 5. Hole 14 is a middle left pin location. So it's close to this bunker there on the left side. I would say this one's pretty tricky because if you short side yourself in that bunker, it's not going to be an easy up and down. And you kind of have it tucked over this bunker too. I know you have some room to work with there, but you kind of have to hit a draw to be able to take advantage of that. Hole 15 is the island par 5. It is going to be in the back middle. So this is a much harder pin location than what you had for today. I think you're going to see the same, if not more, eagles at hole 15, but it's a much harder one to make birdie on because if you lay up, it's a more difficult wedge shot here to this back corner. It's hard to control your spin when you're hitting 110-yard wedge shot, and you don't have that much room to control that spin with, and as well as trying to get up and down from these bunkers. Unless you short-sided yourself in the left, right? This front right bunker was real easy to get up and down out of. This back right corner, it might be a slightly lower birdie rate, I would say. Hole 16 is a middle right pin location. This is one of the easier pins that you have at this hole, but a lot of it depends on the tee box. If they shorten it up for this front right pin, it will be a scoreable look. But if they play it to its full length, which can be longer than like 170, 180 yards, that could be a little tricky. So I'm going to say no real big difference compared to round 1, but this front right is where you do make a lot of birdies. When it's like a moving day, they move up that tee box. That's a day where you see a lot of potential hole-in-ones. Hole 17, so this is the drivable par 4. This is on the left side. which makes it kind of tough. I think you're going to see a lot of people hitting 3-wood off of the tee here as opposed to driver. It's an easy up and down here in this front left corner. The issue is that it brings that water directly into play. Even with a 3-wood, if you hit something with a draw, it's going to go into that aquatic penalty area. So it's easier than round one just because the up and down is infinitely easier. Like even if you miss short right of the screen, which is where I think a lot of people are going to aim, you have all this green to work with to try to get up and down. If you hit it just in front of the green, it's probably one of the most simple up and downs for birdie that you can have on the PGA Tour. The issue is that the tee shot is going to be a little bit harder. So it will play to a lower scoring average because you're seeing more birdies made here at 17, but it is a little bit worrisome out there from the bogey perspective. And then finally 18s over here on the middle left. This one will be a slightly harder pin than what you had for today. Reason for that is you have this little false front over here to the middle left side, and it's protected by this bunker more than it was today. So I would say a marginal difference, maybe like a 0.1 shot difference when it comes to the scoring average there. But I still think you'll see some birdies because if it's playing to the same exact wind direction tomorrow, which I believe it is out there for what it was Thursday, it's going to play directly downwind. So you're talking about like a 100-yard shot into the screen. So you're going to see some guys that are able to take advantage, even with a little bit more of a tricky location there for round number 2. So just to circle back to our averages, to go back to these, I think the birdie average might go slightly up. The reason I say that is it looks like they set up the course with less front pin locations, likely because they saw how firm everything was. So I think that's going to go up to 3.4, maybe even 3.5 per round. The bogey average, though, I don't think is going to move very much. There were a few tricky locations in general, right? They were about the same difficulty as round 1. So I think it'll probably be about 3.1 once again. But I think you might see slightly more birdies just because of those middle to back pin locations, which you saw in almost every case, right? There was only like 1, maybe 2 front pin locations. And just to go through that, like 3 was a front pin, and that's a par 5. So that's not like most people aren't going to go for that in 2, right? That was like the front one with the big slope down the middle. Any other front pins? Not really. Like 8's not a front pin. You have 16 paces to work with, 11 there at 9. Like heck, even 10, you have 17 paces to work with. 12 is, right? So 12, that's a par 3 where you have that front pin location. But outside of that, 17, which is that drivable par 4, you don't have a lot of these front pin locations. So it's like the PGA Tour is reacting to some of the conditions and trying to make it a little bit more doable out there for these players. So I feel pretty comfortable about bumping up that birdie average a little bit. In terms of your scoring average, you know, if it moves up by 0.1, like maybe it's a quarter of a stroke under par. So I don't think it's going to be a massive difference. Worth noting, though, as I mentioned previously, the AM was about 0.2 shots easier. So if we're talking about a daily average of about a quarter of a stroke under par, that means the morning wave is probably closer to a half a stroke under par scoring average. So the second half of the day, probably closer to like a 0.1, 0.2 under par scoring average, if that gives you a little bit of an idea. Let me bring up Underdog real quick while I get a sip of this Arizona iced tea. I'll see if there's any questions we need to go over, and then we're going to find some props to go out there and enter for tomorrow. Let's see. There's Underdog. Let me reshare our screen, and let's catch up on chat because I see a bunch of comments down there now. Let's see. Learned a drivable par 4 doesn't count for a fairway hit if they hit the green. Yeah, there's a lot of stupid rules like that, Mark. Another one that's really dumb that I don't like is that if you hit the other fairway at some golf courses, it counts as a fairway hit. So, for example, you're playing hole number 5. You've got hole number 2 just about 20, 30 yards to the other end of the fairway. Some courses on the PGA Tour, believe it or not, they'll count it as a fairway hit if you hit hole 3 when you're playing hole 5. So there's a lot of dumb stuff like that. What's going on, Frank? Yeah, it's been a minute. Welcome on in. You think Nick Taylor, Burns, and McNeely should have a better round tomorrow? I think so too. Especially Nick Taylor. I'm with you on that one. I think he's going to putt better. Sam Burns as well. I think he's also going to go out there and putt better. And McNeely's probably not going to hit 2 water balls again. So yeah, I like that, dude. Yeah, I'm right with you on all of that. And Kisner is a good fade. You're damn right. I've got to say, a lot of comments I get, I usually have something to nitpick about, like something I don't agree with. Frank, I'm with you on every single thing you said there, especially even the Kisner fade. What's going on, Derek? Welcome on in again. I saw you at the other live stream as well. Love to see sweaty tryhards getting in DFS and prop stuff. What's going on, Phil? You're going back to Cebu and Showdown. You don't learn. Hey, I live and die by the Spieth train too. So everyone has their guy that they play, and you wouldn't have it any other way, right? You got to play your guys. Got to have some fun with it. What's going on, Joseph? Do I think they'll do anything with the course in terms of watering greens? I could see it, Mark, but these pin locations are kind of telling me that they know it's going to get firm. They know that it's like kind of on the edge, but they're making it scoreable, right? Those middle to back pin locations are actually easier when you have these firmer conditions. But what it could mean is that they don't want to water the course, or they want to keep it semi-playable for the next day in terms of pace of play. And then on the weekend, they could make it diabolical, right? Because if they don't water the greens, they use these kind of pin locations in the meantime. Saturday, Sunday, if they really want to bring up the carnage, do front pin locations just over bunkers, right? With these firm greens, and watch players shoot 75, 76 all day. So we'll have to see what they end up doing, but there's always a chance they water the greens, but the pin locations tell me otherwise. What do I think the cut will be? If I had to guess, -1 will probably be the cut line. The Gala will have a bounce back round, especially with the AMT time. I'm with you on that, Dave. I'm playing him in Showdown, who's going to be super low owned, and he's a hit or miss kind of guy. Somebody that usually when he doesn't have his best stuff will shoot 3-4 over par, but he's really quick to rebound as well. So that's why I like him there. What's going on, Bill Bobby? What are my thoughts on TGL? I think it's an interesting concept, just not there yet when it comes to the production quality. They need a better simulator, and they need to ramp up the rules a little bit to make it more competitive. So I like the idea. I watch it. I've had a lot of fun betting on it too, but there's improvements that they can make, and I think they know that, and they will improve it. Jack says Spieth versus Connors for some fewer strokes and underdogs. So we'll talk props on underdog here in a second, but Spieth, I'm a little sketched out about. You guys know I'm a big Spieth guy too, but I'm a little bit sketched out about the injury. Connors, he gained a bunch of strokes putting today. So I'll give you my thoughts on the board in general here in a minute, but those two maybe not my favorites. You are sweater, but you never win. Hey, if you're sweaty and you're working at it, you'll get there eventually. So keep at it, my dude. Just checking out pick 6. Going to try a few strokes parlay. They don't give too many options. Yeah, the issue I have with them, Hermit, is the payouts on pick 6. They're lower than the industry standard, and that's my main bone to pick out there with pick 6, but they're all right. Any guys that putted poorly today that usually putt well here? Yeah, Scotty Scheffler. He'd be number 1 on that list. He normally gains a bunch of strokes putting. He lost about 2 into the negative, but I don't know about putting here well normally because Grazeman doesn't have a big sample size, but hard to think that he's going to lose 3 strokes putting. Glover lost about 3 strokes putting as well. You can see the list there, but those would be your main candidates. Taylor Moore is fun. Yeah, he had a good day today. He gained across all 4 stat categories, about 2 strokes per round as well. Any risk-taking Batia over 4 birdies with the solid round? The shots gained metrics were extremely impressive. So just to show you that there with Akshay Batia, he gained 1.4 off the tee, 2.6 over there with his approach play. So a very well put together player, the kind of guy that was gaining across the board. This is the kind of stat profile that's sustainable from round to round. You don't want to see players that got lucky with the more variant parts of their games. That'd be around the green. That'd be your putting, where you usually go out there and you regress to your mean rather quickly. The 2 categories that you can usually take from round to round, keep going, that putting, that off the tee and approach, he checked. So there's some risk there, but I kind of like it. What's going on, David? He said, playing PGA, don't know much. Currently 9th on Fanduel and Draftkings. Use the same single lineup and you're currently winning 1K. Yeah, I've been in that position before, Dave. It's you always wish that you could cash out early, right? That's usually what I posted in the Discord. I'll post a screenshot of a lineup winning like 25K. And I'll say, stop the count, right? Like they said 4 or 5 years ago or whatever. It's I've been there before. I feel it. But hey, that's where you'd rather be after 1 round, right? You'd rather be winning than finishing in last. So best of luck to you. Højgaard gaining 6.4 putting is crazy. You're damn right. So just to show you what he's talking about there, go to the top end of the putting list today. Højgaard gaining 6.4 strokes putting is not going to happen again. He's a very inconsistent putter, to put it lightly. What am I thinking about Spieth? He hit his irons well. So yeah, I'll just say the whole Spieth thing. He's so raw and he is so new to competition ever since that injury that I know he's capable of having good rounds. Round 4 last week, by the way, really good performance. Went out there, he gained like 3 strokes tee to green. Today, he gained tee to green. He gained over 2 strokes out there with his ball striking. I've seen it for 18 holes at a time, but last week, if you take a look at rounds 1 through 3, he was utter crap. So, I'm a huge fan of his. I hope he goes out there and proves me wrong, but I have the sneaking suspicion that he's probably going to come back down to earth, especially with the PMT time when things are going to get a little bit tougher out there. It just, I don't know. It feels like he's skating on thin ice, especially without all that experience lately. So yeah, I guess that's my take on Spieth. Let's go through the board. So in terms of props that I wanted to look at, I think a lot of it's going to depend on the shots gained metrics because, I think conditions are going to be pretty much spot in line with what we had for round number 1, which means that this board should be priced rather fairly. When conditions aren't going to change that much from day to day, usually these sites kind of know what to do. Like they're not going to be drastically off on any one player. But what we can do is if we find people that were hitting the ball poorly in round number 1, right? Maybe we fade them out there tomorrow. On the flip side, we want to try and take an under on strokes. Trying to find those guys that were really popping in the ball striking is usually my favorite way to go about it. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to go to the top end of the shots gained ball striking. Scotty would be great to get to, but we already know he's going to be at like 67.5. So like, I don't know, maybe it's not like the worst play to take him at that sort of number, but I'm more so thinking guys at like 69.5 that we can try and take for unders because that would be -2 round. That would be gaining like 1.5 strokes to the field in terms of a scoring average, which I think is pretty reasonable to ask of a player that's in form. And just to get an idea of where they have this board priced. So guys like Windy are at 69.5 and Juice just a little bit over. Scotty Scheffler is -125 for his under at 67.5. But what I'm more so looking for are some of these guys like maybe a Tom Kim at 69.5 that we can get for a -150 under. Now, I know Tom Kim is 0.5 lower, right? So you're not going to be able to get him at that same exact number, but maybe we can find a few guys here at 69.5. Maybe not -150 for the under, but maybe we can find like -130, -135. That would still be a decent plus EV lean. I'm going to say I really like Burns tomorrow. I know he's probably going to be at 69 strokes, though. So, yeah, he's already bumped down 0.5. Maybe we look at his birdie line, though. We do the same thing with Tom Kim potentially as well. So, let's see what they have. Haven't quite taken a look at that yet. So, yeah, Sam Burns is at 4.5. Same thing with guys like JT, Hideki Matsuyama. Let me see what they have him at over on sites like Caesars. So, I'm assuming 4.5. I just want to see the kind of juice they have attached to these players. So like Hideki's -135 under. Windy after the really good round is -150 under. But where's JT at? JT -140 versus the under. And then no Sam Burns line, it looks like, over here on this site. But they usually project him right around where they put a Justin Thomas. So JT is -140 under. That probably means Sam Burns would be in that same sort of range. So not plus EV value out there on those sort of leans, but maybe these guys at 4 could be in play. So like, for example, Sahith Theegala there at 4 birdies. I know he didn't have the best round 1. He looked a little bit sketchy, but he didn't play the worst. If you take a look at the shots gained metrics, the off the tee wasn't great, but he was about an average over there with his approach play, but lost 1.5 with the putter. I wouldn't expect that to happen again. He's normally a lot better at putting on these greens at TPC Scottsdale. He's got some of the better course history of anyone in the field around here. In fact, I guess it's not going to show it over here on the player card when we're looking at the current stat averages, but I mean, he nearly won this event a few years ago. So I don't know, like an over on birdies at 4, especially because I think the birdie average is going to go up a little bit, right? I think it's going to go from like this 3.36 probably to closer to like 3.5 per round. With the push equity at 4, I don't hate an over on this sort of player. I do kind of wish we got him at like 70 strokes. Like if we got him with that push equity at -1, like I'd feel really good about taking that spot. Let me see. Was he one of the guys that had a line on here? So yeah, no Sahith line over here in Draftkings. Let me see if they have him posted over here in the Fanduel. So they do, but do they have a line posted is the question. So yeah, he's not posted in terms of a projection. A little bit of a bummer that we don't have anything to compare to, but like even the 69.5 there would probably be in consideration as well. Just to go through the rest of the board, try and find some of these ball strikers, right? That was the main thing that we were trying to find on here. So like Akshay another guy that we could look at in terms of ball strikers. What is his projection over here? Let's see. Good old Akshay Bhatia. I got to say, Akshay is a good course fit here. He hits the ball high enough to access some of these pin locations. 69.5. Do we have a line to compare to? So no line to compare to, but at like 69.5 strokes, like those are the kind of leans I'm thinking about, especially with the AM tee time. He's got a late enough tee time to where it's not going to be super cold when he's teeing off. Maybe the 69.5s aren't the best way to go about it. Maybe it is this birdie line that we were looking at before. Like we had that one. I know the Thagala one, right? He's another AM tee time that we could look at for like an over at 4 birdies. I'm kind of torn on whether I like the strokes line better or this birdie line better. I feel like there's a lot more push equity over here with these birdie lines, but I'm wondering if the hit rate is worth taking over there in strokes. I guess I'll mull it over here for a few more minutes. Let's take a look at the fairway lines just to remind ourselves. Fairway average about 7.2 per round. Green regulation average was 11.89 per round. So it was a little bit firmer than what we had the last few years. Fairway average went down about 1 compared to what you had the year prior. And then the green average went down about 1 per round as well. So that's why the board is priced a little bit lower than what you saw out there for Thursday. Nothing that really stands out as mega value out here in any of these spots, except for maybe like an under on Ches Reavie fairways. I know he's accurate, but that seems a little bit crazy there at 9 fairways. And let's take a look at greens. So the green average did go down a little bit, but on an elite tier iron player like Spawn, who I know kind of burned us in round number 1, I'm not against taking it over. I'm not sure if I'm going to get there myself, but I'm not against taking the over. And just to give you some perspective on JJ Spawn, he did burn us for today, but he hit 12 out of his 18, so he went under by 0.5, and that included him losing 4 strokes off the tee, multiple water balls, which obviously are going to keep you from having a green regulation, and twice that he had to lay up out of bunkers. So if that kind of like shows you, like, even if you just have like even an okay iron day, you're probably going over this 12.5 green line. So I would prefer an AM guy just so the greens aren't as crunchy as what you're going to have in the PM. So that would favor somebody like a Billy Horschel out of the top end of the board here. And just to give you guys some insight on Horschel, he gained 2.8 strokes on approach today. So he hit his irons absolutely beautifully out there. So yeah, if I was going to look for an over on greens, it would probably be somebody like him. And just to go back to the birdies, I kind of like how aggressive Sahith is going to have to be, right? Like if Sahith is going to make the cut at +3, he's going to have to make a shit ton of birdies. He's going to have to go for broke. So let's keep him in there as the other prop we're going to take. And then let's look for some live props to try and offset the payout a little bit. So just to show you guys what we have on the live side, scoring average was 2.91 under par, and your birdie average was 4.6 per round. And just to show you guys the weather, which I forget where the golf course is. Let's see if we can find it on the map. It's up around here somewhere. I think it's this field that you have right here. This is the golf course that they're playing on. They're playing at night, so keep in mind that they're playing around like 6 p.m. But what you can see here, right, is 6 miles an hour wind pretty much the entire time, and not a whole lot of gusts that you have coming through. So it was pretty much dome golf over there from round number 1. That's why you had these relatively easy scoring conditions. But I do think the pin locations might get a little bit harder. You had a lot of players bitching and complaining about how hard it was going to be to play at night. And I think the setup for round number 1 reflected that just from watching the broadcast, which was on Fox, by the way. Nice to actually have it on TV for once. It looked like they were like expecting it to play super hard. Like they were like, okay, these players have told us that's going to be a way different thing at night. And they absolutely tore the turf off the golf course. So I think the scoring average might come back down to earth a little bit. The wind gusts also look a little higher than what you had for the first day. So like I said, it could get slightly more difficult, I would say, but I don't think it's going to be anything that's drastically different than round 1. So something like maybe 2.5 under par in terms of the scoring average. Your birdie average, 4.25 to 4.5 per round is what I would guess on that side. And just taking a look at this board before, it seemed like they had this priced a little bit too optimistic for my liking. It's a par 72. 99% sure of that. Let me actually double check it real quick. But yeah, as a par 72, those guys at 68.5 strokes, they'd have to shoot -4 to go under, which with a -2.5 scoring average, it's not asking, them to go out there and gain like 5 strokes to the field, but you're asking guys to gain 1.5 strokes to go out there and shoot -4. And just to confirm, yeah, it is the par 72 setup, just like I thought it was. Like, for example, so like a Brendan Grace here, who's at 68.5 strokes, you have to shoot -4 to cover that sort of line. A Mark Leishman would have to shoot -4 to go under 68 strokes. Like, these guys would have to shoot -5. I think in general that these guys are 0.5 to probably an entire stroke too low. Again, I don't think it's going to be mega difficult out there, but the pin locations, I think, just have to get a little bit harder. So, like, my intuition with a few of these plays here, and like these guys at 69.5, by the way, it's pretty much like putting them at the field average out there for tomorrow. It's like, do you think Ian Poulter is going to have a better or worse day than the field average? And in most cases, you'd say that these guys like McDowell, Poulter, Bubba are probably going to have worse days than the average. And just to go over here to the leaderboard, let's like check in on how they ended up playing. I'm not sure on guys like a Poulter. So Poulter, he shot -2 today. So he had a pretty decent round, but he would have gone over that sort of line. Let's look at Westwood. Let's look at McDowell and Bubba. So let's do Westwood. Westwood had a really good round. Okay, so maybe we don't fade him. Let's look at McDowell. McDowell, another -2 round. And then Bubba was the last one. Let's look at Bubba Watson. Bubba ended up shooting -3. So they all ended up having, decent rounds. But what we'll remember about these players, and maybe you didn't watch a whole lot of Live Golf last year, is that they were towards the bottom end of the leaderboard almost the entire year. Brendan Grace over here, and I think this is the one that we're probably going to end up playing because I think it's the most mispriced. He lost his tour card last year because he didn't play well enough to go out there and keep his status. So out of all these props that we've seen on here so far, the Brendan Grace prop is my favorite out of the bunch. I guess the real X factor now is what PGA prop are we going to go out there and pair up with it? By the way, that JT at 69, that skin played a whole lot. Is he way off or something compared to the books? Let's see. That's the big red flag that goes off when I see just a single prop getting played a lot more than others. So I guess they didn't have him posted on Draftkings. Let's see where he is over here in Fanduel. So there's JT. He is at 68.5 strokes, and he is juiced towards the over. So he's -150 for the over, hence why he's 0.5 higher over here on Prize Picks. Yeah, not crazy value or anything, but I did want to see where that came in. So they do have Scotty Scheffler up. They took him off the board before. You guys may have remembered seeing there. So he's in play as a potential play here. And I got to say, I'm mighty fine tempted to want to play a Scotty Scheffler prop. Let's see where he is over here on FanDuel. Right? Was that the -125 that we were looking at? So -120 over here on the FanDuel side. And let's see what he is on Caesars William Hill. Got to go the whole way back to these round scores to find where they have Scheffler. So he's -125, just like he is on DraftKings. Oh, the pin setup is kind of why I want to do this. Like, he shot -2 with 2 doubles today. That feels like he's going to improve, does it not? Or was it 1 double he made? Let me fact check myself before I'm giving you guys wrong information. Good old Scotty Scheffler. Yeah. No, 1 double, sorry, instead of the 2, like I said before, but he still got to -2 despite losing 3 shots gained short game at a course where he normally lights it up on the greens with an AM tee time. All right, let's do it. So this is going to be a slip that we take over here for the live stream. It'll be an over on Brendan Grace strokes. Again, I don't think it's conditions that are really making us take that. It's more so the fact that Brendan Grace isn't an elite tier player on that tour. And then the under over there on Scotty Scheffler strokes, who obviously this is asking a lot. He's got to shoot a -4 round. But if there's a course to go out there and take this under on, a player to take this under on, it's Scotty Scheffler at the Waste Management. He's got by far the best form of anyone in the field around this kind of golf course. And conditions should be pretty good towards the beginning of the day. I mean, winds aren't going to kick up till like 3, 4 p.m. He'll be well off the golf course by the time that happens. And he's going to be playing at an 8 a.m. tee time where it's starting to get warmer. Maybe his first 2, 3 holes, he's playing in slightly cooler conditions. But his last 15 holes, he's going to have quite literally perfect conditions out there for tomorrow. So I feel pretty good about that combination there. It does pay 3x because we have the two different tours mixed together. So you're not having to deal with any of that correlation or any of that jazz. But, even if they were from the same golf tournament, right, one was an over and one was an under on strokes, you wouldn't really have to worry about that to begin with. Over here in Underdog, I'm not entering much these days. I'd entered some fades today, entered live just because the payouts are better on fade slips over here. But especially if I'm mixing the two tours, I'm probably going to do it over there on Prize Picks just because I prefer their action right now. I don't think it's the worst idea, though, to take a look at some of these birdie lines. So, like, for example, you don't have a birdie line for Scotty Scheffler posted over here on Prize Picks. Like, he's not even on the board to choose from. You have him at 5 birdies over here on Underdog. So, just to compare that line to see what kind of value we have there, it's nice that they're giving us a little bit of extra options, right? Like, normally they post the same board and just move on. He has minus 155 for his under at 5.5 birdies, but maybe an alternative that you could use out there in a few slips. So they do have JT at, it looks like the same lines as what they have him at Prize Picks. Wyndham Clark, I believe, is 0.5 lower than what he is on Prize Picks. Let's see. Where's good old Wendy's now? So it's the same number over there on both sites. 4 birdies, though. Doesn't seem like a terrible line. Where's he at over here? Is he also at 4 birdies or is he not posted? So yeah, he's just not up at all in terms of a birdie line. What else? I'm just looking for any discrepancies, right? I'm trying to see like if there's any, projections that they have significantly different from site to site. And based on what I've seen so far, it doesn't look like it. Where do they have Fowler at? So he's 0.5 higher over there on the Underdog side. Like there's a few 0.5 discrepancies, it seems like, but not a whole lot of like 1.5 stroke discrepancies, which is primarily what we're looking for when we're going through the board like this. So Højgaard's over there at 70.5. Let me see what he is over here. Nikolai, that is, not his brother Rasmus. So he's at 70. So he is 0.5 higher over there on Underdog. So maybe a few 0.5s that you could try and hang over here and try and find some value on for guys that are there at 70.5 strokes, but not a whole lot of discrepancies. I got to say, of the guys at 70.5, I kind of like the idea of this Gary Woodland under. I mean, he's been playing some very consistent golf lately. Nikolai feels unsustainable because of the fact that he gained 6 strokes on approach. Sorry, with the putter today. But like a Ricky Fowler, maybe you see a little bit of a bounce back there. I know he didn't play the best today, but he's at least got an earlier tee time to work with, and he's a player with good course history around here. Who else do they have at 70.5? So Pavon's an option. But, Ricky, I think he's better than Pavon at this point. They do have Kisner at 72.5. Wow. Dunlop 70.5. I'm just realizing that this board has a few guys that they just didn't have posted over here in Prize Picks. Like, I didn't see Dunlop before. Yeah, like Dunlop's not even posted whatsoever. You know what? You might have 2 slips to take here for the live stream because that Dunlop one especially kind of sticks out as some value. Let me see. Do they have them posted on any of these sites? Probably not, right? So they do have him over here on Fanduel. Yeah, and he's minus 125 for the under. Let's see if they have a Woodland one and a Fowler line. See the value on either one or lack thereof. So nothing for Woodland. Anything for Ricky? Yeah, no. No, so nothing posted for either of those two. So maybe we'll just take this Dunlop prop and then go over here to the same thing we were looking at before, the Live Golf stuff, and try and find another fade to enter. So like an Ian Poulter does not make a whole lot of birdies. 4.5 birdies does not seem a little high for somebody like him. Let's see. So they do have him at 4.5. Over there on the Prize Pick side as well. But let's see who else they have on here. I have a sneaking suspicion that this board is going to be a copy and paste of what we have over there in Prize Picks, but I guess we shall confirm rather than assuming things around here. So 4.5, 5. Yeah, it looks like virtually an identical board out there from site to site. I mean, we could just fade Poulter for birdies. I mean, like, I'm not against taking that just because it's at the same number or his over on strokes. I'm just trying to think of which one I'd prefer there. Let's look at his form, shall we? Let me bring up his data golf profile real quick. That's the issue with these live guys. We haven't seen them in God knows how fucking long at this point. Who knows how they're playing? So let's see. He's lost strokes to the field in like a million straight events. Okay, we'll just take his over on strokes. That's probably the safer way to go about it. So I can't enter the slip over here on this account because it's locked out. But yeah, this under on strokes on Dunlap, and then the over on Ian Poulter strokes is going to be another slip that I end up entering myself. So the Dunlap one is pretty close to plus EV value. It's more so the fact that I think he's a better player than average. I think the scoring average is going to be about 70.5 tomorrow, maybe 70.75. But either way, I have him gaining half a stroke to a stroke to the field in most cases. Ian Poulter, on the other hand, with this kind of form, like I don't see that happening, right? I see him most likely losing strokes to the field, like he has in, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 of his last 11 starts worldwide, he's lost strokes to the field. And by the way, that includes an event on the Asian Tour that's against absolute slapdicks. That he made the cut, but still lost over a stroke per round over there in Macau. So I feel pretty decent about that fade as well. Could he go under? For sure. It seems like it's a pretty easy golf course, but I have my sneaking suspicion that they're going to set it up a little bit harder. And even if they don't, you're talking about Ian Poulter, who is a well below average player over there on the live golf side. So it'll be the second slip that we enter. And now let's go through a few matchup bets, which I promised Mr. Knapp down there in chat that we'd go through. So let's bring up those matchups and dive on into that side of things. Let's go through the chat before we do so. Where are we at? Did Sahith play bad today or just get unlucky? It really looked like more of just a terrible round. That kind of happens with Sahith Theegala. He's the kind of player that's a little bit of a loose cannon, very inconsistent from day to day. So I think it's just a bad round, but he's the kind of guy that will shake that off rather quickly. Doesn't always happen, but I've seen it plenty of times before. So I would say that just bad play. Probably wasn't luck involved. What do I think about Matsuyama for the over at 4.5 birdies? So I would stick away from that. The main reason I say that is that you could bet him straight over here on a sports book for plus money. So you can see it's like plus 105 odds. When you're taking them on a site like Underdog or Prize Picks, you're getting minus 120 to minus 130 implied odds in most cases. That changes depending on the slip that you're taking. Some of the lower EV slips, it's actually even closer to minus 140 odds that you're taking on a lot of these single leg slips. So that's why we're normally looking for props that are juiced minus 130, minus 140, that we also agree with to try and overcome that kind of edge, that kind of juice, right, that you're taking on all these props. So you know, you could still take a Hideki Matsuyama favored prop, like maybe his strokes line, that isn't going to have this kind of juice towards the under. So that'd be my main concern there, I guess. I still like him to play well tomorrow. Just I might choose a different category that's better value. Pretty sure they said Scotty at the morning averages 65.5. Holy shit. Yeah, I'm okay taking the under 67.5 then. Fitzy's at 69.5. Yeah, I faded him today and actually ended up making some money on that. But he's playing decent golf lately. So I actually don't know what I really think about that line. It kind of feels like a coin flip. We ended up hitting the over today, but it wouldn't surprise me if he went over there and had a good day. Minwoo for the over at 4 birdies. I think that's a decent opportunity. Same thing with the Akshay one. I know we pointed out the Akshay prop before, but Minwoo, a guy that I bet outright this week. So I can't disagree with you there. I think he's a pretty good lean. You lean more fades on round scores for the second round. Yeah, that's definitely something you could do, but I honestly don't agree with that in every case. I think that there's a lot of players like Scotty that are likely to go under. You said it at the same time with Akshay. Yep. Do I like targeting pars or better? So let me see what they have up. I didn't know that they had anything posted. So let's see. They do have some stuff up. Look at that. Scotty got taken off the board. Not a surprise, I guess. Those bastards are quick with taking stuff off. But let's see. So they have 2.5 pars or better for most of these players, which the average today was 3.11 per round. Bogeys are worse. So that's a 14.9 or so. Pars are better per round. But they have a lot of your elite tier players on here. So it's right. It's not your slapdick. So they have up here at 15.5. If you're going to try and find a fade for a player, this is probably the best category to do it. just because I do think there's going to be more birdie production. We pointed out at the pin locations that they look a lot more accessible than what you had for round number one, right? Which is why I'm taking some positive stance plays, right? It's not for no reason, right? The conditions look pretty much the same weather-wise, but the pin locations look a little bit softer than what you had for the first day. So, but if you are going to take fades, though, the reason why I point this out is there's still a few pretty tricky pin locations, like hole 12, hole 6 kind of stand out as some of the harder pin locations that you have out there. Like 17, you're going to see more birdies at, but I could also see more bogeys around a hole 17. So if you're going to take a fade, I'd probably stay away from the strokes lines unless they're plus EV value. The main reason I say that is I think that these bogey lines at 2.5 are easier to hit. They're just a lot more feasible, in my opinion, than what you have over there with the strokes, because you might have a guy, for example, like Wyndham Clark here that makes like 6 birdies tomorrow, but could also make like 3 bogeys to offset that. And he might shoot a -3 round, still go under on his strokes line, but could cash this under for pars or better, going out there and making 3+ bogeys. So it's kind of the idea with these fade lines. Like a Jordan Spieth would be a prime candidate for fade. I know he played well round one, but he's likely going to come down to earth, right? That's coming from a Jordan Spieth stan who's saying that. So it feels dirty to say, but it's true. That's what I would look at for fades personally. He averages 6 birdies here. Crazy for Sahith. Yeah. And he's got a 4 line early tee time. And dude, the other thing I like about the Sahith there is he has to go for it. Like he's +3. He has nothing to lose. He has to shoot like -4 to make the cut, which, I mean, if you're going to shoot -4, you got to make at least 4 birdies or better. So I like the mindset too. McNeely over 4 birdies, but PMT time. I'm okay with it. McNeely's a pretty damn good player, but he is not like an elite tier birdie maker. So there are guys I like a little bit more, like Sahith, but he's in play, I would say. Taylor Moore for the under 70 with the AMT time. The only issue I have with Taylor Moore is that he had such a good day today that he's due for some sort of regression. You just got to hope it doesn't come too hard and too fast on that sort of player where he ends up shooting like a couple over par, right, in terms of that regression. Yeah. Yeah, it was 2 eagles that he made, not 2 doubles. Yeah. I don't know who Palantir is, to be honest. Has made you more money than Scotty. Scotty's made me a lot of money, that's for sure. You were thinking of pairing up Scotty and another player to get around plus 100. Yeah, I'll take a look at what we have for the odds. Scotty Strokes is gone on Prize Picks. Yeah, we could see it there. You go in with Wyndham at 4 birdies. Probably not, Michael. We'll have to see later on. I got to run my projections still after we get off live stream here. So probably not, though, because he had the super low round. Kind of like Horschel for the over 4 birdies. I was thinking that too. I like him in DFS. I think he's going to go out there and have himself a day. He gained those 2.8 strokes on approach. Let me see what his strokes line is, because if he's at like 70, it would make a whole lot of sense. He is there at 69.5. Yeah, kind of like those other guys we're looking at. I like those overs on birdies. I still like these 69.5s, though. Like, there's a good chance I'm going to play a lot of these 69.5s. Palantir is a stock. You think it's cannabis? Oh, okay. So you're talking about actual stocks that's making you money. I've got to look at my P&L from last year, but Scotty Scheffler was my highest ROI player. And I think I averaged like 12% ROI per slip out there with Scotty Scheffler, which I know that doesn't sound crazy, guys, but I run insane volume on my props. So like 12.5% ROI in every slip you're entering into the profit, of course, is insane when you're entering the kind of volume that I am. So I'm with you on the whole Scotty thing. Scotty's pretty much like his own stock index, going out there and just printing money. I can't disagree with you on that. So yeah, let's go through a few of these matchups. So what I was thinking about for matchups is I usually like to try and go after the guys that were popping with their ball striking. And one that really stuck out to me when I was going through these profiles was Akshay Bhatia. His stat profile is just beautiful. I mean, most of the green is over there with the off the tee and approach. And then he was still okay with the short game, right? It's not like he was bleeding a lot of strokes in either category. That screams like sustainable ball striker, like the kind of thing you could see going from day to day. So let's get Akshay in here, see who he's going against. So he's plus 140 against Wyndham Clark and McCarty, which it's kind of a saving grace that he's got Wyndham Clark in that same group, or else he would probably be close to like plus 100 if it was him versus 2 slapdicks. Matt McCarty, though, at plus 260, I've got to say, I think he's in play on this kind of group just because he is from TPC Scottsdale. He does have all the local ties out here to this kind of thing. But if you went Akshay, and just because I know we had the question about like parlaying it over here with the Scotty Scheffler, if you took these two together, what would it pay? So it'd be a almost 3-1 that you'd get on these two. Like you could even try and take another minus money one if you wanted to try and get it close to plus 100. But I don't hate the idea of using even like a plus 140 like that, or even like a plus 200 that you could find elsewhere. Let's go back to the ball strikers and look at the top end of the board. Let's see who Kurt Kitayama is going against. Yeah, let's look at Kurt Kitayama. That's probably my favorite out of the ones that we saw there. So Kurt Kitayama is plus 150 against guys like Corey Connors and Eric Van Rooyen. I mean, I've got to say, I think I like that one even more than the other one we were looking at there. Corey Connors, by the way, I'm glad he had a good round today. Ended up cashing me out on a prop that I took for him, but he gained 3 strokes putting. Hard to believe that that's going to happen again. Whereas if we take a look at Kurt Kitayama, had a similar type of round, but gained 4 strokes on approach, was maybe the best iron player that we had in the entire field. So I've got to say, out of all these bets, like the Scotty Scheffler minus 170, like I've got to be frank with you, I don't know if I really want to bet that sort of number. Like minus 170 is just kind of like a no thank you. These are the two that I'm probably going to bet myself. Let's get Akshay back up here. Why is it not letting me control F this? Come on now. Akshay Bhatia. There you go. Plus 140. Let me do some line shopping to see what we have on these other sites real quick. Let's see. So those are head-to-head matchups. Let's find the 3 balls. Let's go Akshay Bhatia. So he's plus 140 over here. And then what did we get in Kurt? It was plus 150. So it's the same odds, the first one. Can we get better than plus 150? And we can get plus 160 over there in a Kurt Kitayama. So Kitayama, go and play over there in Fanduel. You have access to both Draftkings and the other site. But Akshay is at the same number on both sides. So just for completion's sake, I guess we'll go over here on Caesars and make sure that they don't have a better number available. So Akshay plus 140, same number on the other site. And then Kurt Kitayama is plus 150. So plus 160 looks like the best number that you can get on Kurt. And then that plus 140 looks pretty consistent across the board. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over here to Hard Rock Bet and see what we have in terms of odds, which a lot of times they don't post these until the morning. So I'm going to be able to enter this myself right now, but I guess it's worth checking. Sometimes they have this posted earlier than other times, but yeah, nothing up quite yet over there for the waste management. So in the morning, I'll have to see what kind of odds that I can get. But these are the kind of matchups that I'm looking for. Guys that just were sustainable across the board, going against guys that maybe weren't as sustainable. Right, with the Kurt Kitayama one, already mentioned the Corey Connors gaining all that putting, but Van Rooyen just had a bad day across the board. So he's also a player that's pretty exploitable. Wyndham Clark, just to show you his shots gain metrics, he didn't have a terribly unsustainable day, but he did gain over 3 strokes with the short game. He did have an excellent iron day, hence how you shoot a -7 around, but he carried himself with that short game too. So, somebody like Akshay going up against that, I would say that he has a better chance of replicating that kind of round than Wyndham does, just because it was so short game dependent. And then to look at the other player we had on there, it was who? McCarty. Just like you had in the other group where you had that guy who was the absolute stinker involved as well. McCarty, he looked pretty shitty across the board. So could he rebound? For sure. I hope he does for the sake of some of my main slate DFS lineups. But this doesn't look like the kind of stat profile that you should be all that worried about, right? In this 3-ball kind of format. So that's why I like those kind of matchups. I'll always take the ball strikers over the guys that are kind of luck sacking it. And that's what you're getting with those kind of bets. Let's see. Tom Kim versus Adam Svensson birdies. So I'm assuming that's over here on Prize Picks. So let's see. Yeah, Svenny versus Tom Kim. Tom Kim's a higher birdie percentage player than Svenny. The only thing that makes this one a tough one for me to want to bet or consider is the 0.5 matchup aspect. If you don't know how that works, it's relatively new. So I'm just saying this for anyone watching that isn't as familiar. In the past, they used to have these 0.0 matchups where if you would tie with your opponent, you'd end up pushing that bet. Now, a quote unquote push, like if they had the same exact amount of birdies, it'd actually be an under with this 0.5 matchup there. So that's the only thing that would keep me off of that kind of bet, because there is a slight edge, I would say, to taking Tom Kim over and Adam Svensson here, but it is made up for by that 0.5 aspect, which it doesn't seem like a big difference, but it is. Like, for example, I mean, look at this. Scotty Scheffler versus Tom Kim, right? Scheffler's clearly better than Tom Kim. No one would refute that out there. If you do, you're crazy, right? If you think that they're the same sort of player and they have that 0.5 difference and they're in that same kind of matchup, that's the one thing to point out there, I would say. Connors over Phillips for the matchup. Let's see. Yeah, Phillips is a low tier player, so I don't hate the idea of going after him. The issue I have with that matchup is that Corey Connors was putter dependent today. Kind of like we just pointed out, it feels like he's going to come back down to earth with that flat stick. So I don't hate the idea there, but all over Knapp tomorrow. He plays out of this course, so I think you're onto something there. You actually have been screwed by that before when they tied. Yeah, so I like just to point that out to people. I don't play a lot of those matchups, like for good reason, I would say, just because the matchups are very variant. They're extremely hard to predict, in my opinion. But those 0.5 matchups, they screw you a lot more than you'd think, especially when it's like a lower tier player that you're going against. Like this Fitzpatrick versus Lashley one, right? It looks like almost too good to be true. Like a medium to high tier player like Fitzpatrick versus a Slappy, you'd be surprised how many times these two will end up pushing over the set of like a 50 or 100 round sample size. It's in fact, the most likely outcome between these two players is that they'd push over that 50 to 100 round sample size. So it's definitely something you have to account for. That's for sure. Alrighty, guys, that's all I've got out there for the live stream, though. For all the pieces of exposure that I'm getting to in Underdog and Prize Picks, make sure to check out my Patreon page for all of that. But best of luck with everything that you guys are getting to. Smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content to come throughout the weekend. Rounds 3 and 4 will be doing the same thing that we did here, going through the stat averages, pin location, wind, all of the different props as well over there for Saturday and Sunday. So don't miss any of that by subscribing to the channel. And also make sure to check out the stream over there on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel, where I went over all the showdown stuff before. Also on my Patreon page, you guys can find all of my projections over there for showdown. And I guess I'll give you guys the top end of the board. So I have to show off my projections at some point, I guess. If you made it this far into the live stream, you get to see the top end of my projections. Mostly because I want to show off what I've done with them. So I've got it color coded just like I have the last few weeks. And over here on the right, you can see some of the color coding that's going on. I've got plays assigned in my pool to give you guys an idea of not only who I'm playing, but also why I'm using each player. And it's one of these 4 tags for every single player in my player pool. If they're purple, that means I'm using them to try and get different to the field. Yellow means that I think they're going to regress back to their means and have a better round tomorrow. Ball striking means that they have a sustainable ball striking record that I could see going from day to day. And then this high birdie or better percentage are guys with a lot of horsepower, guys that can go out there and make a lot of birdies in bunches. So I briefly showed you guys the top end of the board. Yes, I'm playing Scotty. Yes, I'm playing Sam Burns. And you can see some of the reasoning there as well. But to check all of that out, make sure to check it out on my Patreon page there as well. But that's all I've got, guys. Appreciate the support here on the channel. And best of luck with everything that you're doing tomorrow.